Hello everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to some more Mob Psycho. Welcome back to the final episodes of Mob Psycho. Go in the description, click on the Dailymotion, Google Drive, or BitChute links. Actually, don't click on the Dailymotion links, because they're not gonna work, because all of the episodes of Mob got blocked. I don't know why. It just happened. So click on the Google Drive or BitChute links. That's it. No Dailymotion. And feel free to enjoy some Mob Psycho 100 Season 3, the final... How many episodes was this? 6 episodes? The final 6 episodes. And yeah, go watch that. I'm not going to talk about it right now, because you should all watch it and watch my reactions to it, because... that's what we're here for. Oh, also in the reactions, I mentioned how I'm gonna do an opening and ED ranking for Mob in the redirect. I don't have time for that at the moment. I've been very busy, so I haven't had time to record that, and I know me, and I know that would take me, no joke, like an hour to do. So, I don't quite have time for that, sorry. I will try to actually do that some other time, because I do genuinely enjoy doing, like, opening and ED reaction things. Oh no! I broke my shoe. Anyways, I am going to try to do that, because I do actually want to do that. But I wasn't able to do it here. My apologies. I'll probably upload that as a separate, like, junk drawer video or something. The point is, you should watch the episodes now, because I'm about to talk about them a bit, because I feel like I have to. So, go watch them. I'm going to get into spoilers now. If you haven't seen my reaction to these episodes, watch them now. Okay, thanks. I am beginning spoilers in 3, 2, 1. So, I don't usually talk about videos, reactions very much in the redirect. I used to do that a ton. There's a couple of Hunter x Hunter videos where I did, like, specifically include the redirect in the mass direct, because I was like, these are important to the reactions of the reactions, because, like, in the redirect, I provide context to what I thought in retrospect, or like my opinions have changed with time, so I need to include the redirect. But I don't often do that because I don't really enjoy, you know, kind of requiring you to watch the redirect to get the full like idea of how I feel. And I don't often change my mind over time. Usually I'm pretty firmly set. But with this, I feel like I kind of had to, because I'm gonna be real, I'm kind of bummed that I wasn't a big fan of the ending. I don't know how people generally feel about these final few episodes. I specifically haven't really reached out and asked people. I've asked one person who said they fucking loved it. So, I'm a little scared that I was just being a bit of a bitch, which is very possible and very fair enough. It would not be the first time. Go watch my Flip Flappers or Madoka Magica Let's Watches. Actually, I don't think you can watch my Madoka Magica Let's Watches. I don't think I have them up. And I'm not too upset about that, because I didn't like most of Madoka Magica. Sorry, I'm very sorry, but I love the movies, so, you know, maybe I should actually put those up. But, go watch my Flip Flappers if you want to watch another show I wasn't a huge fan of. But I did enjoy watching, but I wasn't a fan of it, which is a strange way to put it. And that's kind of how I feel about these final 3 or 4 episodes of Mob. What were the final hold on. I mean, I also could talk about the Alien episode, because I've been thinking about that. So, I recorded these episodes, like, in, I want to say, early September. It was a while ago, but I wanted to record Jujutsu Kaisen as well to upload alongside these, because I couldn't allow myself to upload just these episodes because I know some people might be disappointed. So I wanted something to pair alongside them, to pair alongside these episodes, if that makes any sense. Because I don't like uploading things where I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like doing that. So usually I try to like upload one where I'm like that, and then one where I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So that's why this took so long to do. On top of me just being busy with other things, I didn't want to rush uploading this, knowing that it was kind of iffy, and I wanted to upload it alongside Jujutsu Kaisen. The point is, yeah, I wasn't a fan of the final 4 episodes, which is bizarre to me, because this session took me on such a whirlwind of emotions. We start with I think that's episode 7 in the top left corner. I think? Let me quickly confirm. Yes, episode 7. Episode 7 was super fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I liked the new character. I was, like, weirdly, like, crushing on him. I thought he was just, like, a really cool dude. And I kept saying, like, I don't know what it is about him. I just really like him. So that was fun. And then episode 8 happened, and episode 8, I still don't 100% know how I feel about it. I have no idea. I don't know if I overreacted to it and it wasn't that weird and like I just wasn't ready for it. I have no idea. A part of me thinks that it wasn't that weird of an episode and my reactions were just amplified because I wasn't expecting it, or I was just having a weird day or something. I have no idea. But everything down to like the animation and then the aliens and then just casually having a montage with the aliens and then the entire weird like Ghibli-esque ending sequence. Just I have no idea what was going on there. Even, like, the term Ghibli-esque is wrong for what that was. I have no idea what that was. And then it never comes back again, except for, like, a throwaway line in the next, or, like, the last episode or something. I have no idea. Super weird. But I loved episode 8. It might have been my favorite episode of the series. Very fun episode. Very, I think Mob is at its best, needless to say, when it is focusing on the characters just kind of having fun and enjoying their youth and yada yada yada. And man, episode 8 had a lot of that, but it also had just the batshit crazy stuff. But even for Mob, it was like a different level of batshit crazy. So that was fun. And then we get episode 9, 10, 11, and 12. And I'm very cautious to see what everyone thinks of my reaction to it. So I've given it a bit of time, and I want to talk a little bit more about my overall disinterest in it. And oh man, I'm trying to phrase it in a way that's not just rambly, but I am a rambly guy. So it's gonna come across as very rambly no matter what I do. First things first, I want to say this. In one of the episodes, I forget which one, I want to say it was the final episode. It was episode 12. There is a moment where Reagan says he doesn't have powers. And Mob reacts in shock. And I believe I put this in editing. I believe I did. I then took a clip from season 2, and I just figured I misremembered that scene. Because I remember in season 2, Reagan admitting to not having powers. Because it was a big deal. In fact, I think I used it as the thumbnail for that episode. Because it was such a big moment. And I thought I must have just misremembered it or something, and I'm just being stupid. But in retrospect, I rewatched that bit, and no, that is definitely what I got from the scene. Because Reagan basically, and excuse me for getting anything wrong here, but from my reading of it, Reagan is going to tell Mob, hey, I'm a fraud.
Did you know?
Know what?
What I really am? I mean, what they've been saying in the news?
I always have. From the very beginning. I've known that my master is genuinely... a good guy.
My reading of that scene has always been, I don't know if Mob knew from the beginning that Reagan was lying, but at a certain point it became apparent to him that it's very possible Reagan is lying. He's not going to assume that, but he can definitely recognize that something's a little suspicious about it. And this was just kind of his... He was just made... He just kind of finally faced it in that episode, and he finally went, you know what, yeah, that's definitely true. And then Reagan saying, like, oh, how long have you known, that's Mob's full confirmation of, oh, not only is this true, but he's ashamed of it. And Mob, not even, like, I don't think he considers it a betrayal or anything. He just kind of goes... Because when Mob says, I've known all along, I don't think he's saying, I've known you were a fraud all along. I think he is literally saying, I've known from the beginning you were a great person, and that is what drew me to you. That's what mattered. That's all that mattered this entire time. But I also got the implication that he knew Reagan didn't have powers, and that if he ever went along with it afterwards, it was for Reagan's sake. It was to not embarrass him, because they both knew. But then in that final episode, there's a moment where Reagan says, I don't have powers, and Mob is shocked. And I think you can still read that scene as... The reason it is so impactful is because Reagan is admitting it. Because in that scene in Season 2, he never outright says it. He never admits it. I was under the assumption that they both knew, and it was like an unspoken, okay, yeah, sure, kind of agreement. But now I'm curious if that scene was supposed to be read as Mob genuinely still doesn't know and Reagan decides to not come clean, which is really scummy. Like, for him to be on that... But it's so weird because that scene is meant to be this, like, very beautiful, touching scene. And if the idea is that Mob genuinely just is naive and doesn't know still... It's not very touching. It's just he's a kid and he's kind of dumb and he just doesn't know any better. And I guess you can read it that way, and that Reagan is deciding to take advantage of that. But it's definitely not how I read that scene. And it makes that moment in the end of Season 3 a little strange, where it's like, this is treated like a really big deal, but I don't fully think it is. Like, it is what snaps Mob out of it. And it's like, man, I don't know. It's a little... Like, I get it, but this isn't like some massive moment that the show's been building to, because we kind of already got that in Season 2 in a really cool, touching moment. So I don't know. Once again, I think you can argue it's Reagan fully coming clean, not with just Mob, but with himself and stripping himself of all that, like, bravado. But I don't know, man. I feel like we got that in Season 2, just in a more subtle way. So I don't see why this moment was so impactful. Like, yes, it's obviously impactful, but I don't know if it's impactful enough to, like, be the crescendo of this entire thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not reading it properly. One other thing, though, what the fuck was the deal with Dimple? Feel free to go in the comments and tell me, hey Shad, you're a dumbass, this is clearly what happened. Because I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm sure I am fucking stupid. But I went back and I listened to Dimple's explanation of how he came back. I listened to that shit like 20 times in a row and I still don't know what it means. He says, and once again, excuse me for being wrong, he says something to the effect of, you must have really wanted to see me so I didn't actually die, and then your, like, massive power surge brought me back.
Shigeo. If I had to guess, you must have been harboring a strong desire to see me again. Strong enough to prevent me from being totally destroyed. And then I was drawn into this power spiral, which is how I was able to come back.
And it's like, what does that fucking mean? Dimple, what are you talking about? Like, it is such a non-answer. And I don't know if maybe I just, once again, misinterpreted the ending, or like misinterpreted Dimple's final moments. Because I was a little unsure of if the tree floating up in the air was an act of Dimple, or if it was like the Psycho Helmet going, I don't need this planet anymore, and he just flies off. Or if it was a bit of both, and it was Dimple, like, affecting Psycho Helmet's judgment, and that's what made him want to leave, because Dimple didn't want him to destroy the planet, therefore Dimple's aspect of himself that fused into Psycho Helmet decided to not harm the planet and now leave. I wasn't 100% sure. Like, in retrospect, obviously it was Dimple taking it off into space. But I just figured if that was the case, then Dimple's not dead, and why isn't Dimple back? So I figured Dimple was probably dead, but then I don't see how Dimple did that, unless it was with the last of his power. But I feel like that wasn't made 100% clear, and that it was a little up to interpretation. Like, it was a little vague on exactly what happened there. But then the ending kind of just has Dimple come back, and I don't understand why or how exactly. I feel like that's a really big deal. Like, I feel like if Dimple just flew it up into the sky and then came back in the next episode, would that have made the scene less impactful? Yeah, for sure. But also, if you're gonna bring him back anyways, why wait for the final episode and a big reveal? Because the implication I got there was Dimple survived everything because Mob still held on to a bit of him in his heart, and that kept Dimple, who was like a curse and stuff, that kept him alive. I'm sorry, is Dimple a curse? That's what he is, right? He's like some kind of like ill-omen spirit thing. So the idea is like, as long as Mob held him in his heart, even just a little bit, then Dimple was still around, and over time he got stronger and stronger, and eventually became strong enough to return to a physical form, and Mob's power surge is what finalized that process. That's what I think they were saying happened, but it was phrased very oddly, and not a lot of time was spent on it. And I feel like these final 4 episodes being all about, well, I guess the final 3 episodes being Mob's, like, rampage, kind of took up a lot of time that should have been spent on, like, what happened to Dimple? What's Reagan thinking about all this? What is Mob's brother thinking about all this? Like, we definitely get some of that, but we also get a lot of characters showing up and trying to do things, because it's the end of the show, so all of the characters have to do something, and I don't really like that trope in anime, where like, oh, all the side characters have to come in and say something, and all these characters have to come in and say something. Like, I didn't need the big bad from season 2 to show up or anything. I didn't need that. I'm okay. He's in prison, whatever. Like, the whole idea of, like, the prisoners coming to stop Mob just felt super weird, because it's like, I've seen Suicide Squad. sure, I get the premise, but like, how long has Mob been going on a rampage that they've collected powerful prisoners to do this? Like, what, like, was this program set up in, like, beforehand? Maybe it was in, like, season 1 and I just forgot. I don't know, just seemed really out of nowhere, and, like, just they needed an excuse to bring him in. Also, is he out of prison now? I forget. I don't think he is, but they just kind of walked away from the scene, and he's still, like, a prisoner? Anyways, he might have shown up in the final, like, montage of characters in episode 12. He might have, and I just forgot. Who cares? That's not the point. The point is, Mob's, like, rampage takes up a lot of time in the final 3 episodes, and I feel like that time would have better been spent focusing on characters that actually mattered a bit more, like Dimple and Reagan and Mob's brother. I feel like that, and I mean, we got time with blonde hair kid, I apologize, I forget his name, but we got a lot of time with him, and I just feel like we could have used just as much time with the other characters and less time with the other kind of minor antagonists or main antagonists from previous seasons. Don't get me wrong, I think they're really cool characters, but I don't think they're more important than Reagan or Mob's brother and all that. With that said, I believe I've talked about basically everything I wasn't a big fan of besides that, but now I want to get to the number one thing. Overall, I enjoyed these final 4 episodes I enjoyed them for what they were, but I had some problems with them for sure, specifically Dimple, some aspects of the final Reagan speech. As much as I loved it, thought it was a little messy in parts. But everything from that point on, I actually really liked. I especially liked Mob being a little more animated at the end. I kind of wish we got a little bit more of that, because it is interesting to see Mob being a little more open with himself. That's another thing I would like to talk about. I won't, because I just have a bad memory. But I could have sworn we kind of got the whole Mob is gonna stop holding himself back as much thing in season 1. I could have sworn that was a thing. And, like, in the end, like, because all of season 1 is Mob trying to control his emotions. That's the whole 100 thing. It's him trying to hold himself back. And then I could have sworn in season 1, the ending is basically him letting loose and saying, I don't need to be scared anymore. These are my powers. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just making that up. Feel free to comment and tell me, Shad, you're stupid. That never happened. Maybe I'm just wrong and I'm stupid. But I could have sworn like we kind of solved that problem in season 1, which is why I wasn't really focusing on the whole build up to 100 thing in season 3. I don't know if I focused on it a lot in season 2, but in season 3 I really didn't focus on it much, because it was mostly used for like humor or like comedy and stuff, and I didn't really care about it too much, because I was like, well, it's not really that big of a deal anymore. Because in season 1, the idea was if Mob hits 100, he ends the world and shit. But, like, now we know that's not really the case, and it's really circumstantial. And they even have, like, gags where Mob hits 100%, and he's, like, 100% high horse and stuff. And it's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal anymore. So, yeah, the ending being like Mob is gonna stop holding himself back, and he's gonna be more open, and he's gonna accept himself more. I get it, but like, I feel like that's something we covered before, but maybe I'm wrong. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate what those final 4 episodes were doing for Mob's character. I guess the final 3. I appreciate what they were doing, and like trying to sort of personify Mob's insecurities and have him eventually accept himself. I get it. I just wish we had more foreshadowing of it, and I guess maybe back in season 1 there was some foreshadowing. I don't remember, it's been a long time. But I wish this season had a bit more of that. Anywho, the point is, I just feel like if this was the ending we were building towards, we could have foreshadowed this direction a bit better, as opposed to, you know, a lot of this season kind of being its own stuff with the big broccoli and stuff. Anywho, the point is, I mean, I guess you could argue the Psycho Helmet thing was kind of foreshadowing it, because it's Mob wanting acknowledgement for how powerful he is, and I guess that's what his insecurities wanted, I think. Anywho, the point is, let's stop talking about this. Let's talk about the number one thing that I did not like about these final 4 episodes, Mob being hit by the car. Now, I'm gonna come at this from a more grounded perspective. I wrote something down. This was about, I don't know, like a day after I watched the episode, I took some notes, and here are my notes on, like, Mob being hit by the truck and that being his catalyst for going nuclear. Because let's be honest, that's what the show has been building to all along. It's Mob losing complete control. And, I mean, that was obviously where the show was going to end up. If it was going to end up in a big climactic thing, it was always going to be Mob losing complete control. I just think him getting hit by the car is stupid. I understand he didn't lose control because he got hit by the car. I understand that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I think the implication is that Mob was, like, stressing out without knowing it, and the car knocking him out was just what caused him to trigger. But he was actually getting really stressed, and he just didn't know it. I just kind of wish he was stressed out, because up to that point, he seemed super chill, and I get that might have been the point, is that on the outside, he seems okay, but on the inside, he's, like, freaking out. And he's not even aware of it because he's not in touch with his emotions. Maybe that was the point. I feel like that could have been expressed a bit better. The point is, besides the fact that I think getting hit by a car and knocking Mob out is kind of stupid, considering how strong Mob is, the idea of him just getting bopped by a car and being knocked unconscious is a little weird. This kid has been, like, hit by a building and been fine. I digress. I understand the situation is different. He wasn't prepared for it. Although he should have been, because he jumped into the car. He should have been ready to push it back or something. Once again, I don't want to hang up on the truck thing. The truck isn't the point here. I don't want to hang up on it too much. I just think it's stupid. Anyways, like, Mob is so powerful. We've established that. Why couldn't he just push the kid away or stop the car or literally do anything else? I digress. Here's what I think. I think Mob being subconsciously stressed out and being knocked unconscious being the act, no matter what knocked him unconscious, him losing consciousness and being subconsciously stressed out about Tsubomi leaving and his nerves acting up and causing his breakdown is a decent idea, but I don't think it's a very... Man, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think it's a little... Like, even if he got knocked out in a way that I liked, I just find it to be a little... what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not melodramatic, because that was always gonna happen. It's just a little... I don't know, it doesn't feel like that big of a deal. Because it's just nerves, and we've seen Mob... Like, Mob has been knocked out while his brother was kidnapped. Like, that happened in season 1, right? I could be wrong, but I could have sworn Mob watched his brother get kidnapped and then got knocked unconscious, and he didn't, like... I think he beat up the guy, but he didn't, like, destroy the city. Like, we've seen Mob stressed out before. So I just don't know if I believe that this would trigger that kind of a reaction. So I wrote down an idea, and this is a super rough idea. These are notes I took on the next day, and I haven't given them much more thought. I haven't even read this for weeks, so excuse me if this is rough, but I'm just going to read it verbatim, and then we can go over it and see how we feel about it in retrospect. So, here are the notes I took. I would have liked it more if Mob was rejected by Tsubomi, and Tsubomi said something kind of mean about his powers, like that they were weird, and that kind of caused him to resent his powers because he thought they were the reason he couldn't be with the girl he loves, and his powers are like, no, Mob, it's not my fault, it's your fault for getting your hopes up, I am you, she doesn't like you for who you really are. I think that would have explained the rampage a bit more, and seemed a little bit better. Okay. So what I'm saying there is I think if they were gonna have if the plan was always to have Tsubomi reject Mob, which shocks the fuck out of me. I was sure they'd actually go through with that, and they didn't, which shocked me. Because I really figured, like, even if she didn't think of him in that way, she likes Mob, and they're, like, friends, so I don't see... I just kind of assumed they were gonna go down the route of, oh yeah, sure, man, you're cool, and he'd be like, yes! But if they weren't gonna do that, and they were always gonna have Mob be rejected by her, I think what would have been way more powerful is if she's like, oh, sorry, Mob, I mean, we're, like, great friends and all, but I never thought of you like that. You're just, like, my cool friend, you know? Or, like, you're just, like, my weird friend. And he takes that as, like, oh, I'm weird. Oh, she hates me. She hates me because I have these weird powers, and she thinks I'm weird and I'm a freak. And he's, like, really upset, and he, like, kind of leaves the park, and he's, like, really upset. And he's just, like, sitting on a bench thinking to himself, like, she's leaving. I'm gonna lose my connection to her. And, like, he's not thinking clearly and not thinking that, hey, you guys can still be friends. He's not thinking that. He is distressed. He's a teenager. He's losing his mind. He thinks this is the end of the world. And I think this would make a lot of sense, because even though in previous situations, Mob's been in far more stressful situations than a girl rejecting him, this is still a lot of strain. He has spent the past year, if not more, working on himself, improving himself, trying to be the kind of person that he thinks would accept, trying to become the kind of person he thinks Tsubomi would want to be with, only to then fail, to get up to the point of asking her directly, Tsubomi, I love you, I want to date you, and then she says no. And not only did she say no, but she never thought you even had a chance. And just the despair of that hitting him. And then, I don't know what officially triggers it. Maybe it is a resentment towards his powers, where he's like, that's the reason. That's the reason everything goes wrong in my life. It's because of these powers, these damn powers. And then, I don't know what triggers it. I don't know if then he can get hit by the car or something. I don't know if he even needs to be knocked unconscious, or if he just loses control. Maybe he goes to, like, 100% anger or something. I don't know. The point is, he loses control through some means. And this triggers the rampage. This triggers him going through everything. We can avoid the stupid subplot of Tsubomi staying in the park during, like, the worst natural disaster of all time, which makes no fucking sense. It doesn't matter how much she likes Mob. She's not gonna stay there during that. That's stupid. And then it's even dumber because she's not into Mob like that, so it's even more confusing why she was so insistent on staying there. Like, if she, like, loved him deep down, maybe I could see it, but she doesn't, so, like, what the fuck? Anyways, that way we can avoid that. We can keep him holding the flowers and trying to protect them, because it's his last, like... It's his powers trying to hold on to the fact that, hey, maybe I can still pull this off. It's not his powers. Looking at that second Mob as his powers is the wrong way to do it. It is his insecurities, his base instincts that are telling him, no, Mob, you can still do this. We can still get her back. We just have to go to her. We have to go convince her that she doesn't understand how great we are. And maybe he can still be going to her and trying to go to like her house, and everyone has to stop him. And then finally he's like right outside her door before he's snapped out of it. And we can still have the final moment where he goes into her house and she's like, oh, hi, Mob, bye. And then he leaves and he starts crying. And then we have the whole scene with him and Reagan walking through the fucking destroyed city, which I think is very powerful. But I just wish the context around the rampage worked better for me. And I think if we had his rampage come from Tsubomi rejected him and he interprets that as she hates him because of his powers, and that leads to his insecurities taking control, and everyone trying to help him through what is essentially a breakup, and it is a metaphor for being there for your friend when they're at their lowest. I think I would like that more instead of, oops, he got hit by a car and he's having like a mental breakdown because he got hit by a car? I don't know. I just think if they were going for the final like 4 episodes, you could have done it in a different way that made it more personal. And I don't know if personifying Mob's powers as a second Mob before saying his powers aren't a second entity and that it's just another version of himself, I don't know if that works for me, man. I'm sorry. Like, I hate to be a negative Nancy here and being a bitch and being like, it's not exactly what I want, so it's bad. I hate that. I don't want to be that guy. But man, I just don't like it. I don't like how they stress the point that this other entity isn't some demon that has possessed him or something. It's just Mob. It's just aspects of himself that he's buried and repressed, despite the previous 2 seasons using those aspects of himself multiple times. This very season used them multiple times when he was fighting Dimple. He's learned to accept his powers, and yes, even in episode 7, he all but tells the new kid, hey, sometimes I hate my powers, but they've helped me protect people I love, and they have a use, you know? Like, he's not someone who has buried his powers away his entire life. That's not who he is anymore, so I don't know why that's the core conflict of the ending of the show. He's kind of already gotten over it, and I understand he hasn't gotten fully over it, and it's always going to be there a little bit, but it can be there a little bit. It doesn't need to be the final 4 episodes being stretched out to make it seem like this is some super deep conflict that we've known has been building for so long, because it fucking hasn't been. In the last episode, he was dealing with aliens. I don't know, man. I don't know. And I think it would be much more understandable if what triggered him to fall off like this was a surge of emotions where he was really fucking like stressed and in despair, instead of he's fine and then he gets hit by a car. And I don't even know if the implication is that he's really stressed out internally. That's just me assuming, because if it's not that, then I don't know what he's going crazy about, because it's not like he's been having conflicts with his powers this season. He's been fine. He's gotten over it. So my only guess is that his insecurities about Tsubomi saying no are just like deep-seated, and we aren't seeing them until he loses consciousness and that part of himself takes control. That's my only guess as to what's happening, because otherwise, I don't know. And it would make more sense why he's so, like, determined to go see her, because, like, she's literally leaving. Maybe when he loses consciousness and that part of him takes control, she's, like, getting on a train. So he has to go to her, because that's the last time he'll ever see her, or at least that's what he thinks. In this, it's so weird that he's so determined to see her. It's not like, you know, she's leaving, like, just fucking get up and call her? Like, I don't know. It's just so weird. And I understand it's not supposed to be rational. That's the point. He's a kid. But I don't know, man. It just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. I hate to be such a bummer. It bums me out, too. And it's so weird, because I think I'm so negative on this final session, but I'm really not, because I really liked episodes 7 and 8, and I even kind of liked episode 9, and then 10, 11, and 12 kind of bummed me out. Don't get me wrong, in episode 12, Reagan running to the Mob Season 1 opening theme fucking slapped. That was awesome. I love that scene. I've watched that like 7 times since finishing these episodes. Since I finished editing these episodes, I rewatched that bit like 7 times. I blare that music. I think I turn it up to like max volume because it's so awesome. And I still stand by that really should have led to him grabbing Mob and having that final scene. I don't like it. It didn't add anything for him to get slammed down and then fake out that it's not going to happen and then do it anyways. I don't know why they did that except for the drama. I just don't get it. Like, I would have even preferred if he falls down and then Mob keeps going and then Dimple shows up and he's like, hey Mob, slow down. And Mob's like, Dimple? And he's like, what? And then Reagan comes from behind and like grabs Mob's shoulder or something, instead of Reagan having this awesome scene where he's running to Mob, nothing can stop him, and then he fucking falls and he fails, and it's like, damn it, he was so close. Now Mob is gonna embarrass himself in front of Tsubomi. It's over. And then Reagan appears in front of Mob somehow, and it's like, how the fuck does that make any sense? If Reagan was capable of standing up, why wouldn't he have gotten up? Unless the implication was that Dimple took control of him after he fell, but my assumption was that Dimple took control of him before all that, or at least was aiding him subconsciously. I have no idea. I don't fucking know. I think I've gone on long enough. Maybe I'll talk about this a bit more in a future thing if people are curious enough to listen to me talk more shit. But for now, I think I'm done. I've said all I've had to say. I have to edit this redirect, and I don't want it to be any longer than it has to be. So thank you all for being so patient, and if you actually sat here and listened to all of this, be sure to comment and say, I listened to all of it, Shad, because I don't believe any motherfucker's listening to all of this. But I felt I had to explain myself as best I could, and no joke, I recorded these episodes earlier in September, and this entire month I've had a lot going on. I've had family members literally almost die multiple times in this fucking month, and it's been a lot to deal with, and throughout it all, no joke, as pathetic as it sounds, I've been thinking about, man, how am I gonna explain myself in this redirect? Because I've been thinking about it so much, because it's affected me that much, because that's how much I hate being negative. Like, things really have to go out of their way to bother me for me to go this in-depth on it, to go this hard on, like, shitting on something. And if I'm going to do it, I want to try to make it as clear as possible and explain myself as much as possible. And at the end of the day, it's totally cool if you're like, hey Shad, I think you're a bitch. I thought it was awesome. I loved it. I didn't give a fuck that he got hit by a car. You're just stupid. That's totally fair. I feel that way about a lot of things. Trust me. There is a ton of stuff that people have criticized that I fucking love, and I just go, I hear you, I just think you're wrong. Like, trust me. Plenty of things. I mean, Code Geass is one of those shows, and I criticize it. Like, one half of me goes, I think the show's actually kind of bad, and then the other half goes, Johnny Young Bosch is in it. It's actually the best show of all time. So I understand that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong if you enjoyed it. It's just, this is how I feel. I can't help how I feel. I want to try and express it as clearly as possible so that you can at least see that I'm coming from a place of logic in my mind. Even if it's not something you agree with, you can understand, like, I am coming from a place that I genuinely feel passionately about it, and that's why I feel this way. And it's not just me going, this show sucks, you know? Like, I'm not doing that. Trust me. Anyways, I think I've talked for long enough. I've been recording for like an hour. I was supposed to like do this for like 10 or 20 minutes, dude. Oh my god. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I'm gonna edit this now and put it up as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. Feel free to comment down below and give your opinions on the final episodes. I'm very curious what everyone thinks, because I have not looked up anything. Usually, if I'm watching an anime and I feel kind of conflicted, I'll go to like Reddit or some shit and I'll be like, what are people saying about the ending of this fucking show? But I haven't done that for Mob, because I kind of don't want to let other people's opinions influence me. So I'm really curious how people reacted to these episodes. Like, were people generally just like, that was awesome? Or were people like, oh my god, that's so emotional, I'm gonna cry? Or were people like, that was stupid? I have no idea. I'm really curious. So if you have an opinion, feel free to throw it in the comments. Or don't. That's cool too. Do whatever you want, man. Your life is your own. That's a quote from the opening. Okay, anyway, that's it. Thank you all for watching. I will be back at some point with an opening and ED like tier list, because I want to do that really badly. But for now, we're gonna end it there. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of whatever comes next. Thank you very much, and goodbye. I'm gonna go play Baldur's Gate now. Bye.